The show, we were just trying to sort out our sound situation here to hope that my guest, Paul Hoffman, is able to hear me loudly and clearly, and you, esteemed listeners, are also on board by getting a very clear reception this morning right here on News and Views Salam Media. And before we get to the actual interview, I do need to tell you a little bit about Paul Hoffman. He is an advocate. He's with Accountability Now, advocate and senior counsel. And he has a book which is called Countering the Corrupt, the What, Who, Where, Why, and How to of countering corruption. And this book is available for free download through the link, which is accountabilitynow.org.za, and that is exactly what I'm going to download after my show today. And I really got to get to read this book, and I'm truly pleased to have Paul Hoffman on my show this morning. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the punt, Julie. The secret of the book is to start on page 145. It's not an Agatha Christie novel, but if you go to page 145, you get the keys to the kingdom on those pages.
I'm going to read the book and I'm going to give you some feedback on it, and I'm probably going to have lots of questions for you. But let's get to the heart of the matter, and obviously we're talking about the Zuma case. I did indicate in my introduction that, it is really draining us as South Africans, is it not? I think in all forms of resources, monetary and otherwise, and there just seems to be this ongoing game that is being played out with every delaying tactic that is being used by his defense counsel under the sun. Also in play now is the issue around Billy Downer. His defense counsel, his defense team obviously believe that Billy Downer should now be stepping down. Let's try and go a few paces back and try and make sense of where this is going to. How do you see all of this playing out? And I have no doubt in my mind that legal eagles all around the country, possibly around the world, are possibly now sick and tired of this delaying tactic that his legal team is using.
Yes, I'm afraid they're getting very close to the dividing line between putting up a strong defense to a matter and getting themselves onto the vexatious litigant terrain. This matter goes back to 1995, when we were so young that we didn't think that it would ever still be featuring in our lives in 2021. The decision made in 2009 not to prosecute Mr. Zuma, even though his financial advisor, Shabir Sheikh, had been convicted and sentenced to 15 years for corrupting Mr. Zuma, has really taken an inordinately long time to get to the point that we've reached today. Just in very brief outline, what we had was the decision not to prosecute, a review of that decision, which was only finally determined in 2017 by the Supreme Court of Appeal, with Mr. Zuma's team throwing in the towel and saying, actually, you're right, they should never have stopped the prosecution. And now, that advocate having died, that was Advocate J. Kemp, who invented the Stalingrad strategy moniker for the Zuma defense. Now he's got a new team, and they are trying to re-argue everything that was argued previously without success. When he was eventually recharged, Mr. Zuma tried to get a permanent stay of prosecution. And in an application for a permanent stay of prosecution, all of the points that they are airing now were available to them. And they are simply doing a rehash. I think your strapline says same old, the words of Wim Trengove, who's representing the state in the matter. There really is no merit in the suggestion that Mr. Downer lacks objectivity. The purpose of being a prosecutor is to seek a conviction in a prosecution. Now, the objectivity is the job of the judge, not the prosecutor. Certainly, you can't have prosecutors persecuting people, but to suggest that Mr. Downer is somehow persecuting Mr. Zuma is really far-fetched, and it's not going to fly. The judge is being very patient with the 4 hours of argument that Mr. Trengove was able to shoot down in less than an hour yesterday. There will be more today, and it's not going to end well for Mr. Zuma. It is time for this case, as on the merits of the charges, and there's 790 odd transactions that the state is seeking to prove, that needs to be dealt with, and we need to get on with it.
I just want to read a paragraph here, and this obviously relates to Billy Downer. Trengove comes out guns blazing and slams Zuma's lawyers for the extraordinary attacks on Downer, which he says are defined by insult and hyperbole. He points out that Downer had started to cry when he found out about the unlawful conduct uncovered in the spy tapes. Obviously, we're going way back now, a demonstration of his integrity. The man should be given a medal. Obviously, we're referring to Downer now, Trengove says, after pointing out that Downer stood up to his bosses when they made unlawful or unjustified decisions in the case. Just flesh that out for us a bit, and then your thoughts on how this is all going to end. And they're using all sorts of tactics and psychological warfare to wear Billy Downer down. Do you think they can break him and he'll just probably walk away from the case and ask someone else to step in?
I think that Billy Downer's frustration with the case is because he had done a great deal of work getting the case prepared in order to take it to trial. And remember, if it had gone to trial in 2009, it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, for Mr. Zuma to be the president of the country. He was elected as president of the ANC in 2007. Remember, at Polokwane, he won, and Thabo Mbeki lost in the race for the presidency of the ANC. But that does not automatically make you the president of the country. And if Mr. Zuma had been facing charges when Parliament convened after the 2009 elections for the purpose of voting in a new president in South Africa, and he had been facing the charges that Billy Downer had painstakingly prepared for the purpose of prosecuting him along exactly the same lines as Shabir Sheikh was successfully prosecuted by the same Mr. Downer, then there could have been objections in Parliament to Mr. Zuma becoming the president, successful objections, and the ANC, in fact, would have been ill-advised to put his name forward as a candidate while facing charges. You obviously cannot be head of state and head of the national executive of the state at the same time as you are sitting in the dock in a serious criminal case, which could, as happened with Shabir Sheikh, lead to a conviction and at least 15 years in jail. So the whole trajectory of South Africa and our respect for the rule of law has been undermined by the decision of acting National Director of Public Prosecutions, Mshe, not to proceed with the prosecution of Jacob Zuma. And clearly that decision was colored by political considerations. It wasn't a decision that it was open to him to make. And when the matter eventually got to the Supreme Court of Appeal, it was no contest. The Zuma's representative said, well, okay, yeah, sorry, we were wrong. And by then, we had got from 2009 to October 2017. And Mr. Zuma was out very shortly after that because his team lost at Nasrec in December of 2 months later. And on Valentine's Day, the 14th of February 2018, he resigned. So his political career was cut short because of Billy Downer's persistence in prosecuting. Now, Mr. Downer, I think, was totally entitled to be frustrated and upset that all of the work that he had put into pursuing the matter, and if there hadn't been politics in the case, in an ideal world, Mr. Sheikh and Mr. Zuma should have been tried together in the same trial, which actually ended in 2005, which was only 10 years after the events giving rise to the corruption, the fraud, the racketeering, and the money laundering, which really started in 1995. So I think that what Trengove says in argument is indeed a correct submission, and that it is way offside to pick on Mr. Downer simply because he got emotional when his frustration got the better of him. And I think that's a perfectly justifiable human reaction, and the reaction of a man of integrity.
Okay, our final question, time constraints. Very, very serious precedents have been set as far as this case is concerned. How does the legal system then move forward? What do you see this outcome, the Zuma trial outcome, to look like? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but just reading all the legal, having followed the case up to now, how do you see it playing out if there's no further political interference and the insurrection that we had in July?
Yes, certainly the insurrection does seem to be related to Mr. Zuma's position in the world. Obviously, the insurrection was at least in part organized by people who want the old Zuma way to continue, and to continue to operate in corrupt ways with impunity from punishment. It's one thing to be corrupt and to take your chances with a system that may bring you to account, but it's an entirely different thing to continue with corruption because you have captured the system to such an extent that you get away with it. And Mr. Zuma's case is the iconic case of holding people who do wrong things to account. And the courts are alive to this, which is why Mr. Zuma is now facing the charges. I do not see his special plea, which is just previous defenses that he's raised, rehashed. I do not see it succeeding. I do see the trial proceeding. I do not know, nor does anybody else in South Africa, other than the doctors and the lawyers involved, I do not know whether his health will be such that it precludes him from standing trial or from serving time if he is convicted in the trial. But I am sure that the state will continue to apply the rule of law to Mr. Zuma on the basis that we are all equal before the law in South Africa, and that the rule of law is regarded as supreme. If it does not, then South Africa's downward trajectory, which is evidenced in the increase in poverty and inequality and joblessness, in the weakness of the rand, in our junk status, and in the fact that 9 million young people are neither employed nor in education nor in training, is something that 9 million foot soldiers for a revolution is where we've got our country to by proceeding in corrupt ways. If the corruption is addressed, new investment can be attracted, and South Africa can rise from the downward spiral that Zuma took us on and have a better life for everybody.
Frightening indeed. We hope and pray that common sense prevails. We hope and pray that justice is very definitely served in this instance, because only then can the country and the rest of the world realize that there is hope for our beautiful country. Advocate Paul Hoffman, thank you indeed for your insights and for your time. Go well and have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's exactly 8:36. News and Views with me, Julie Alli, right here on